Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. We are now joined by the creator of Spirits of Fashion. Yes, Karen, better known as Ren, is joining us here. Her last name, Antonowicz. So again, Ren Antonowicz is here joining us to talk more about the amazing company she offers. And yes, she is extremely fashionable, obviously. If you're looking at her here on the Zoomcast, look at that beautiful beret. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Jill, and I hope you are too.
Oh, I love it. Yes, and I love what you do. And you mentioned style never dies, and you're a firm believer in that. So I appreciate you being here and excited to get to know you and your background and all you have to offer. Let me just ask, you're in Chester, Vermont. Is that where you're based out of?
That's correct. A small
Ah,
town in Vermont. Yes.
fall foliage at its peak right now, or
Oh, it's absolutely beautiful up here, and the weather's cooperating too.
oh,
So
good
good
for
time to
you.
be up here.
Well,
Yeah.
please introduce yourself to our listeners to start. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Karen or Ren Antonovich. We've been in Vermont for 5 years. I'm from Rhode Island originally. And my husband and I both loved Vermont and decided to move up just almost exactly, well, 5 years ago in May, last May, almost exactly 2 years since we moved to this town of Chester.
And let's talk a little bit about, you and your background because you have this amazing business,
Oh,
which we're
sure.
going to get to know. And I wanted, but I need to know a little bit about your backstory, if you don't mind, before we get started.
No.
Now, let's talk about you as a young girl and give me the breakdown how you got involved in this.
Okay, that's a good question. When I was young, my aunt was in the antiques business.
Oh,
And she used to come over to the house occasionally when she was doing an antiques show. And she would bring all of these things with her, take them out in the kitchen, and tell us about each object. I was enthralled at
ooh,
that young age with
yeah.
her. And then around the same time, my father took us on a trip to Newport, Rhode Island,
Oh,
which is, where the Gilded Age was at its peak, and took us to the breakers. I was only maybe 8 years old.
by the way,
And he took
my
us to the
son,
breakers.
7 and 9, I just took them there this summer. We did a little road trip. We went to the Breakers. Okay, this is a great story. Thank
Isn't
you.
it fantastic? I fell in love. I still love it. I can't get enough of that Gilded Age, the mansions,
Hmm.
the way people lived, what they might have worn. So that it started that early in
Yep.
terms of the real backstory. I don't know how far forward you want me to go, or do you want me to keep going with that?
I want to hear a little more. Of course. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Well, when I was in high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I didn't even think about the antiques business. So I ended up, I was a dancer. I was a ballet dancer for years. And my guidance counselor in high school didn't know what to do with me. I didn't know what I wanted. So she said, maybe you should be a dietitian because that goes well with ballet. Well, went to college, hated it. Did not like I have to be
Hmm.
honest, I did not like the especially once I got to senior year, I was really unhappy in the major, but it was a little late. So long story short, I got through my internship a few years later and I was a registered dietitian for 20 years. Never loved it, never felt really happy in it. I just kept moving jobs. When I really hated one, I would move to
Hmm.
another one. It got a little better. I really burned out. So,
Yeah.
in the meantime, I had been loving vintage clothing. I just got this, sort of from way back when I was a kid and too young to understand what vintage clothing was. By
Yeah.
the time I was in my 20s, I saw a couple of movies in the 80s, Pretty in Pink and Flashdance. And the girls in those movies loved, they wore vintage clothing.
Yeah.
And I started to collect it along with accessories and started to wear a little bit here and there. And I loved it. And all I could think about was, oh, I have to open a vintage store someday. And of course, I had to support myself. So I continued with the job I didn't like. And, 20 years later, I was sitting with a friend and burned out. And I said to him, this is exactly what I said. I can't do
Hmm.
one more diet history. I can't do
Uh,
it. I'm done.
yeah,
And
it's a
he said,
lot.
well, what do you want to do? I said, well, I'd love to
Uh,
open a vintage store, but I didn't have the money. I was single at the
yeah.
time.
How?
And so I said, this was the turning point. I said, well, I can't go to school for it. He said, oh, you're wrong. He said, I know the chair of the department at the University of Rhode Island, where I went as an undergrad. He said, they have a program in
Oh,
textiles, merchandising, and design with a concentration in historic costume and textiles. Why don't you
wow.
go and see her? That was it, Jill.
There
Off
you
I
go.
went back to school, got a master's, never looked back, taught for 13 years at the college level, which I did like a lot.
Amazing.
But in 2012, I got a request from a library in Massachusetts, and they were having a 100-year anniversary of the Titanic sinking exhibition, and they asked
Uh-huh.
me to talk. So I did a talk with video clips in like a PowerPoint presentation kind of thing, and brought all of the clothing and accessories from my collection from that era. That was it. I knew that was my audience. They were my people. Kept going from there, kept teaching. And in 2013, my new husband and I opened a store in Providence, Rhode Island called
Ah,
Nostalgia, three-floor co-op. So I did get my dream. I did sell a little vintage, but the thing was, we had so many vendors renting space. I had no room for my stuff. So I just
oh
kept
my
it.
goodness.
And then after 5 years, we sold it to a good friend. He still owns it. And
Wow.
we moved to Vermont, and I've been going through New England, building up the business in New England so far,
Mm-hmm.
doing these presentations in libraries and senior centers and, historical societies, museums, etc. So that's the full story in a nutshell.
Amazing. Well, congratulations on this. This is so
Thank you.
exciting.
Thank
And what an
you.
amazing business. So, by the way, where did you go to school? Just curious.
Oh, it was University of Rhode Island,
Okay.
as an undergrad, same building as an undergrad, nutrition. How many years later? I was 45, I think, or maybe 43 when I went back to school. Same building, same school, University of Rhode Island. It was just a
Amazing.
master's program in a completely different field. I had no
Beautiful.
idea it was even there. So
Amazing. And then you got
that's,
your start in the field of historic costume. You said when you discovered the love of vintage and antique fashion and accessories. So you were in your
yeah.
late 20s at that point?
Yeah, when I started really looking at it and collecting and going to vintage stores and all of that. But it took until my 40s till I found out there was a program.
Wow.
And I'm so thrilled. I just worked a million jobs until so I could afford to live until I got my degree. So
Well,
it was very
congratulations. And
exciting.
just got to
Thank
remind everyone how we contact you. It's spiritsoffashion.com, correct? And do you have a
correct.
website, social media page you want to share as
That
well?
the website is what is the spiritsofashion.com. I
Mm-hmm.
have Spirits of Fashion Facebook. I have Instagram too, Spirits of Fashion Passion. And then I have a YouTube channel too. So that's Spirits of Fashion as well. So any of
Wow.
those places, they can get in touch with me, sure.
Wow. And also, I got to point out, you were asked by the event planner back in 2012 in a
Mhm.
Massachusetts library to do a presentation about fashions aboard the Titanic. What?
That's correct. That's
What?
exactly right. Yeah. And they had a
Ah,
little exhibition, and I just happened to have a really good audience, and somebody videotaped it. I got the whole it's on a CD, if you can believe that. That's a while ago. And the whole presentation's on there, and he interviewed me. It was just the best experience I ever had. The best. And that's how I knew that's what I needed to do. So
amazing.
still going.
All right. Well, let's get started and talk more about, growing your business and what type of presentations you're doing and what this is fascinating. So, where do we start?
Oh, well, I just started building up from there. So, I have a whole list of them under presentations on my website. I have a whole list, and I keep doing more of them. If someone asks me, do you have, for example, this December, someone said, "Do you have something on holiday fashion?"
Ooh,
So I said, "Well, you know what? I have one on Dickens, and that time because it's so Christmas related with, his Night Before Christmas. However." I said, why don't I
okay.
just do a new one for you? I said, well, just do through the years, holiday fashions through the
Yep.
years, do Victorian right through the 20th century. So I have to build that up now. But I do the Gilded Age. I do all kinds of, Downton Abbey was huge when it was big on TV. So I did a lot of Downton Abbey fashion, the 60s, Mad Men era, which is 50s and 60s. Um, the 20s, the Roaring 20s, you name it. I have a whole bit, Jane Austen, that era. And what I do is whatever, if I have anything from them, which most times I have some clothing and accessories. If it's something
Mm-hmm.
like the Tudor fashion, which is,
Yeah.
1500, I don't have anything. That's only in museums. I don't have anything, but I still do the same kind of show. Right now, the big thing is bewitched styles at the time of the Salem witch trials because
Oh, I want to take my
that's
kids to Salem.
on.
Years ago, I went there, stayed at that beautiful hotel on the water, and yeah, I want to do that.
Uh,
But I'll have to do that next Halloween for sure. Around that, oh, beautiful up there.
we just came back. My sisters and I go every year. We just came back a couple days ago. So
Oh, so you're my
that is,
expert in that. I'll
oh,
contact you to get more details. Thank you,
oh,
Ren.
please do. I can tell you everything. Yeah, it's great. It's great. So that's been the latest one. So yeah, my idea is trying to, because I do this virtually too.
Yeah.
It's just that after Zoom, I mean, after the pandemic, people were tired of the virtual stuff. But now people are starting to ask me again, can you do this virtually? And I'm hoping to get the word out that I can do this anywhere virtually. And I do the in person in New England, but I can go anywhere and do it virtually. They can contact me from California and I can do it. So I'm trying to get the word out to different parts of the country, whoever would like to have that kind of a presentation.
Hence, you
Um,
are here talking to us. My goodness, you are so inspiring and ready to
Thank you.
go and to even do more. My goodness, how do you manage all this? Wow, this is fascinating.
Well, I do this. It's the only job I really have right now.
Hmm.
Um, I don't have another, job I have to go to. I volunteer at our
Okay.
local thrift store, but it's only once a week, and I'm just ready to go. They ask me to go somewhere. I get in the car and I just go and do it. And then so I have friends to stay with. So if it's a little bit too far for me to travel in
Yeah.
one day, I have plenty of friends back home, as I still say, back in Rhode Island and Massachusetts that I can stay with. So that helps. Sometimes you just don't feel like driving. I don't like driving at night, so it's really tough. I usually have to stay at a hotel if it's too far to drive after an
Oh.
event program. But that's not as common. It's usually something I can do in a day.
Oh
So
my goodness. Well, let's also
yeah.
point out, by the way, I'm on the website, so I'm looking at some of your
Oh, good.
listings as well and all your grouped get-togethers here, your finds, I should say. And so this month has got to be pretty intense, right?
It is. This
Where
this is my busy season. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
Yeah,
I see
yeah,
there's what was it? The Spirits of Fashion. That was a flyer that you had on the
yeah,
website as well. And you could
yeah.
travel through time. Could you share? I mean, these presentations are beautiful. I wish we could share pictures next time maybe. But yeah, I want to know some more about, some of the other, the costumes that you have.
Yeah, in terms of what I bring, I have things as old as, as Victorian. I do have some
Wow.
Victorian dresses and accessories and shoes and all of that. And then the 20th century, let me just put it this way, Jill, my
Sure.
closet is packed. I can barely move the hangers. It's bad. Then we have a huge cellar where I have acid-free boxes and tissue for the
Hmm.
really older garments that shouldn't be on hangers. So that's down there. So any era, I really have something from it, whether it's Victorian, whether it's, Edwardian period, turn of the century, 1920s, 30s, 40s, and right through. Even the 80s, now the younger people think that 80s and 90s and even
Wow.
Y2K is vintage. So I have to keep up with that too. So I do have some 80s pieces too. And when I do a presentation, I wear something from the era, unless it's so long ago that it's too fragile. So then I wear something inspired by it, or I wear a reproduction of, something, say, from the 20s. That way I don't ruin the collection I already have by wearing it.
And where do you store all this? Just curious.
Oh, just I've got closets and I've got lots of room in the cellar with big boxes.
Okay.
Yeah, and acid free. If you can do acid free, it protects the garments for longer. So that's
Really?
where I store it. But it's insane. I mean, if you came in here, you'd be like, this woman is crazy. But it's just, I when I see it, I buy it because I bring it to bring joy to the people who I do the event for. They love it. They love to come and touch it. And we couldn't touch it in grad school. You had to wear white gloves. But these pieces aren't going to a museum. They can be touched, they can be handled, and it's because it's for my audiences. So yeah, so that's what I do, and I'd love to be able to do this for more people, and it's an unusual thing, I
It
think.
is. It's so I've never spoken to anyone like you. You are strictly unique, uniquely unique. I think that's the word I'm looking for.
Thank you.
Um, really, clearly, and you travel now throughout New England to do all these presentations in person. You do them virtually, but you can reach this globally. My goodness,
Yeah,
and
I'd love to.
nationally.
It would be so much fun. I would love it because it's the same thing virtually. The only thing is they can't touch it because it's not with them, but I still show the same clothing. The same presentation is on screen. I share the screen and then they get to see
Yep.
all the clothing and accessories. So I do the best I can in terms of giving them the same exact um, experience with the exception of being able to touch the clothes. That's it. And they can
Uh,
ask questions same way as they do in the live ones. So,
Beautiful.
yeah,
I
a
love
lot of fun.
this. Yay. I'm excited for this. I want to hear what do your attendees say after these presentations? I mean, I got
Well,
to hear some of this.
yeah, well, I'm very fortunate because I mean, it comes easily to me, Jill, to get up there.
Yeah.
It just does. It's just easy for me. And they'll say, "Oh, that was wonderful," or, I can see your passion coming through, and thanks for letting us, touch the clothing. And sometimes I'll get gentlemen, very not as often, but sometimes the wives will drag the guys with them. And the gentleman will come up and say, I never had an interest in this, but your real enthusiasm has really helped me enjoy the fashion as well as the era. So I can win some of them over. And, I joke with them. Like I say, we don't usually get guys. I guess we have to talk about the guys' fashion a little. And, I'll kid them and it gets them involved. I try to get the audience involved in it too. So
Ah,
yeah, there's good comments, thankfully. Um,
amazing.
yeah, they have fun. And then they say, geez, you just brought me down memory lane, which is nice to hear because that's the idea is, some of them remember wearing some of this or they remember their parents wearing it, grandparents.
What
So
about,
that,
do you also have the Roaring Twenties? I think I read that on your
yeah,
site as
the
well.
Roaring Twenties is fun. Yes.
Yay!
Them dressed up, It's some of the libraries will have teas. So the
Uh-huh.
women will dress up. So they'll wear nice hats or they might wear something 20s inspired.
Oh
And that's
my
fun too.
gosh. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, what else did you want your listeners and audience to know about you and what fun Spirit of Fashion could be for them?
Well, I will tell you that the event hosts, when they finally find me and have me come, they're not disappointed. They usually want me to come back and do another one. And even their attendees will say, can you bring her back? We want to hear this other one. We want to hear another presentation. So I just want to get the word out and let people at libraries, anybody who's looking for entertainment that's also educational.
Yeah.
Uh, and that is something that once they hear it, once they see it, they're usually really happy with it, but they don't know about me.
Yeah.
So, it's hard to get the word out there. How many letters can I write to libraries across the country? That's the tough thing.
Yes.
So I think, and word of mouth is important. If that's
Yeah.
helped me a lot.
Hmm.
Once someone tells another event host about it, they'll usually get in touch with me and say, "Can you come here and do that?" So that's the
Oh,
idea is trying to just get more people. And it's also, and we can talk about this next time if you want, but I also do styling with my seniors, trying to get them to not feel so invisible. So we get a little crazy in there, and I collect a lot of statement pieces when I go thrifting. So it could be vintage, it could be more modern, but it's just something that really stands out. And I have a lot of fun with the seniors with that too. They like to feel like they can dress up again and not be uncomfortable. So that's another whole part of the business that I do.
oh my goodness.
So
Well, Hollywood
yeah,
and fashion and, what about, people are watching, was it Bridgerton on Netflix?
yeah,
What age is
yeah.
that considered?
That is like Jane Austen period. So I already have one on that. It's called Pride and Prejudice, Styles at the Time of the Jane Austen Era. And that is a, fairly popular one. I'm surprised I haven't had more of that since Bridgerton has been out. But yeah, that's a fun one. I don't have clothing. The only thing I have from that period is an authentic pair of dancing slippers, one pair of shoes. That's it. because it's the early 1800s, so I don't have anything that old. But people love, they like that period. They like everything. You just have to get the right audiences who are enthusiastic about history, and what people wore and how they lived.
Wow. I love
Yeah,
it. And the Mad Men era, what about that? Must have been so popular too, especially when the TV
that's
series was there.
it still is because because I call it cocktail culture and Mad Men era, I cover the whole issue of how cocktail parties started and how during the Mad Men era, they had bars in their
Yeah.
offices. So they're drinking at their 10 o'clock meeting, they, "Hey, you want a
Yeah.
highball? Sure." And
Yeah.
smoking, and people are fascinated by that. And then, of
Yeah.
course, clothing was to die for,
I
both the men
can't.
and the
I
women.
know.
Yeah.
I know. And,
Yeah.
it's just, let me ask, so what happens on social media? Do you do any social media lives like on Facebook? Are you,
I haven't done lives yet. I think I would love to. I'm still
see?
learning. I mean, I'm a little older, so I'm learning. It's so tough for me sometimes with social media. YouTube, I get. I've been doing that. I know how to do that. But I always feel like when I try to do Facebook and Instagram, it's always changing. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, wait a minute, what do I do? But maybe that needs to be. I've done a few reels on
Yeah.
Instagram, but
Perfect.
nothing really live. I'm going to
Got it.
consider that though. So
All right.
thank you
Well,
for
we,
that.
we should promote though. We still got just only 3 minutes left on the show. We got to promote. You
Yeah.
have Bewitched Styles at the time of the Salem witch trials. That's
That's
happening.
right.
That's 6:30 to 7:30. Tell us a little bit about that and where and how we could, find
That,
out more about that.
yeah. Well, I have on my Google Calendar, it's attached to my website. You can see where I'm going to be and what the topic's going to be. So I think I've got three more in different locations this Bewitched, and they're not virtual. They are in person. But on that calendar, it'll tell you where, it even gives the address of the venue. So people can find me that way. And if they can go, great. If they can come, and there may be some people listening and they can travel and they're not too far from where I'm going to be. It's usually Massachusetts. Connecticut is big. I do a lot of libraries in Connecticut, and
Yeah.
coming up too. So there's one I'm doing in Niantic, Connecticut this coming Wednesday. I'm
Oh my
doing that
goodness.
at 6:30 at night. Yep, that's the one I think you were talking about. That's Bewitched.
Thank you. Yeah, I
Yeah.
saw it on your calendar when I was on the website
Yeah,
before. Yay.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well,
So,
how did you want to kind of leave off for everyone today in our last 2 minutes together here?
yeah, I would just love people to learn more about me by checking out my website at spiritsoffashion.com. And that gives all the information where you can find me. It has the presentation list, the flyer, all of that, a description of all the presentations with a picture attached. And then, of course, I have a YouTube channel and a Facebook page, both Spirits of Fashion, and Instagram is Spirits of Fashion Passion. And I
Perfect.
would love people to reach out to me, DM me, or get in touch with me on the website. I have a newsletter that comes out monthly that's free. That's also a form on the website that people can fill out. And I would love to hear from anyone who is interested in having.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Pleasure getting to know you. Great seeing you. And I want people to check out that website and see all these beautiful, my gosh, costumes and these beautiful periods, all these, how people used to dress. As you say, it's a fashion odyssey, right?
Yes, it is an odyssey. Yes,
And
come on a journey with me.
and you also have some of your own listings as well, Ren, that you sell too, right?
I was, Jill. I was on
Oh,
Poshmark. I don't love selling. I will be honest with you. The problem is I really don't want to get rid of my collection yet. Maybe down
got
the
it.
line, yeah, but I do have a Poshmark. There's not much on there right now,
All
but
right.
I'm
Thank
more
you.
into collecting than
All
selling.
right. Thank you so much. Pleasure having you here. Looking
Thank
forward
you,
to the next
Jill.
time we get to connect, okay? Thanks
Same
so
here,
much. And to all
Jill.
of our listeners, stay tuned. We'll be right back with more.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.